I don't, I'm, well, I'm gonna go. I'm the only trans person here.
This isn't about sports. It's about a gateway for the right to begin banning trans people from access to certain programs.
I'm not
in the
right
civil
away.
service.
I mean, if you want to actually make Pride a family thing, which many people want it to be, how can you allow that kind of stuff?
I would say in Germany right now at the Euros, there are English fans walking around with their dicks out, pissing in the street.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and back to another video. So today we're going to be going over a segment on the Piers Morgan show where he had a very questionable person on his panel, Eli Ehrlich. Now, if you don't know this person, this biological male, in my opinion, is a predator. Blair White already exposed this person as a predator when it came out that he was literally targeting kids, minors, in certain states, letting them know that if they wanted to get their hands on hormone therapy, i.e. estrogen or testosterone, to hit him up in DM and he would get the meds to these kids illegally so they could transition in states where it is illegal for minors to get their hands on these types of hormone therapies. Yes, Eli Ehrlich. So this predator is on the Piers Morgan show going over some topics like women in sports. Gee, I wonder what he thinks about that. As well as the craziness of the Pride movement, specifically a Pride parade in San Francisco, where things like urinating on people in public were part of the family fun that was happening. So without further ado, let's watch some of these clips together, discuss it, analyze, and break it down.
I mean, on that point, though, given you've not been on Uncensored before, we've debated this a lot with other guests, particularly James. How do you feel, given that trans people want fairness and equality, how do you feel about the issue of trans athletes in women's sport, given that it's so obviously, to me and many other people, unfair and unequal?
Oh, here we go. Well, let's leave it to the experts. The different associations have agreed on different standards for different sports. It's all very relative. A recent study actually found that we're too harsh on trans people in sports and require too much, too long of a transition to a point where the equivalent cisgender person would be at a disadvantage. So it's complicated. It needs to be drawn out by the actual sports authorities rather than politicians or pundits.
So if a 6'5" 230-pound biological male boxer puts their hand up and says, "I would like to compete in women's boxing," would you be happy with that?
There are 6'5", 300-pound cis women too. Can they not compete?
They don't have the same physiology as a biological male.
There's weight classes, you idiot.
They don't have the same lung capacity.
They often can.
They haven't got the same muscle mass. No, they haven't. This is the whole point of the debate, is that it's not just about taking less testosterone. You have as Caitlyn Jenner has articulated very well, you have an inbuilt superior physiological advantage over biological females. That's the problem. Now, I want trans athletes...
Not necessarily. Estrogen... Look, estrogen absolutely wreaks havoc on our muscular systems, on our ability to perform in sports. And there's a reason that the rules are so strict, because it does greatly affect our capacity to participate.
Well, we'll disagree.
Yeah, I think this is where...
All right, before we get into more opinions on this, this should be a very simple universal answer. No, biological men should not be in biological female sports. End of story. End of discussion. That's it. I feel like the trans community and the trans movement would have way more support if they took on perspectives that were based on reality and not based on politics and talking points and trying to get around a system to affirm how a person feels at the expense of a woman who worked her entire life to compete in a sport, who now has to compete against a biological male who will have physical advantages over her body. You cannot sit here and tell me that Leah Thomas, a 6-foot+ tall man who competed against biological females in a swimming pool with his long arms, his lung capacity, his muscle mass, all the things that men have that make it so that they're faster in a pool. You can't tell me that those things mysteriously just went away because Leah Thomas went on estrogen. When Leah Thomas was competing and training as a man all of his life before he decided to transition to being a female. So the fact that you have Eli Ehrlich, first of all, the most unqualified person on the panel because of his own disgusting past. But that aside, to have this idiot on the panel saying there's no difference. In fact, this affects trans women more because it's just too strict. No, dude, it's not too strict. The only people who are at risk when you put them against men in physical sports like MMA and boxing are going to be women, not the biological men who want to be women. It's very simple. And then Eli also tries to get out of it by saying, well, what about women who are really tall and big and who weigh a lot? What about them? In boxing, normally you are separated by weight class. So a woman who weighs a lot, who is a heavyweight, is going to compete against other heavyweight women within her same weight class. But a heavyweight man competing against a heavyweight woman, she has no chance. She has no chance. And the fact that this lunatic is trying to create some type of normalcy with this situation as if we're the crazy ones because we are respecting biology is mind-blowing. But it's also predictable, very predictable. And again, the trans movement would have way more credibility if they just accepted biology when it comes to sports. There are certain boundaries and certain lines that we should not be crossing over just to appease and affirm people. It cannot be at the expense of women. And that is exactly what's happening right now with this trans movement when it comes to sports. It's an easy answer. But for Eli, it's gymnastics.
I think this is where a lot of the backlash against the so-called trans community comes from, because we all agreed on that first point that this is pandering and this is companies trying to make money and so on. But when people start coming to arguments about biological males competing in female sports, and by the way, notice the conversation only happens in one direction, and there's a specific reason for that. Nobody is concerned about men's sports or boys' sports.
Yes, I always say this.
And that is because we're biologically different. And I just think that this is the reason why this conversation has raged on for so long. It's these type of ridiculous, frankly, demands that affect women, affect half of the population, particularly those who play sports. And that's where people just get lost. And I think that's where a lot of the backlash or resentment actually is stemming from. I think in the West, most people at this point don't really care. Go ahead.
I'm going to go. I'm the only trans person here. This isn't about sports. It's about a gateway for the right to begin banning trans people.
Virtue signals.
No. I'm not right-wing.
That's not true.
I'm not right-wing. So how do you figure that?
No, it's
well,
not.
you certainly have right-wing views on trans folks.
I don't have right-wing views on trans folks. I've just said to you, I want trans people to have fairness and equality and the same human rights as everybody else.
And even if you don't personally consider yourself on the right, it's still a gateway into banning trans people.
No, I don't want to ban trans people. I would like trans people to either compete
such an idiot
biological sex, which seems to me the easiest thing to do, or they compete in a new section altogether of trans athletes. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, so a new separate but equal league is what you're saying.
Can I jump in here?
Yes.
The solution for this is very simple.
Biology.
Solution, as far as I know, for about a century. And this is simply to have an open sports league and a female-only sports league. A lot of what people call men's sports is not even explicitly men's sports. Anyone is allowed to participate, but because of the biological and physiological advantages men have, if you take the fastest, the strongest people in the world, the best endurance, they're all going to end up being men. That's how it's going to stack up. Which is why if you want females to be able to participate in sports, you need to have a separate league because they can't compete in an open competition against men.
I agree. Let's move on, though, because there's another part of pride.
Zuby dropped the mic. Thank you, brother. Drop the mic. I love what he just said. If you were to allow an open field, women wouldn't stand a chance because the fastest, strongest woman would still have a problem competing against the weakest man in the league because men have a biological advantage over women. This is not about banning trans people. This is about speaking to facts, and biology. This is Marion Jones, one of the fastest women in the world in 100 meters in track and field. In her height, she ran 10.65 seconds, the fastest time she's ever run back in 1998. Now the problem is that Marion Jones was doping for most of that time. Now look at this world ranking of women in the last 100 years. Marion Jones is number 5. Now take a look at the men's world rankings for the last 100 years. If you go all the way down to the very last page, you can see at the very bottom, ranked number 4,898 at 10.43 seconds. American Leon Brown in 1950. That is the last person on the list. Marion Jones' time doesn't even touch that time. Now what's my point? Marion Jones is a biological woman who was doping, and even in her height, while doping, she still could not touch the last ranked man. But we still want to sit here and argue that biological men competing against biological women is not a big deal. It is. Biology matters. But Eli Ehrlich is all about the politics, the virtual signaling, and the pandering. So trying to have a conversation with somebody who is this intellectually dishonest is like, it's just impossible. It's impossible. And it shouldn't be impossible, right? Like we should be able to have this conversation within the realm of reality, making sense, coming to terms with this and trying to come to real resolutions. But you can't, because you have these extremists who are so obsessed with affirmation, even at the expense of the protection of women, the people that they are trying to be. Make it make sense. You can't. All right, let's go on to the next topic.
Pride. I wanted to talk to you about. I'll start with you, James, on this. There is a suggestion that it's jumped the shark. And the reason for that, and we've got some examples of this, in Seattle, a convoy of completely naked bike riders and roller skaters had some questioning just how family-friendly the event was. You got kids there watching this. In San Francisco, Pride had a fetish zone where a man lying in an inflatable pool of urine, where attendees were encouraged to urinate on him. Other booths featured participants getting spanked, whipped, and initiating sex acts on each other, all in public.
And kids are there.
In Toronto and New York, the politics of Palestine and Israel took over, with queer, as they call themselves, protesters preventing the parade from progressing along its designated route by sitting in the middle of the road. So a lot of people saying that it's going too far. Now, James, I would say it does go too far when people do that.
I mean,
if you want to actually make Pride a family thing,
here comes
which
James,
many
the
people
idiot.
want it to be, how can you allow that kind of stuff?
You've given me a lot to respond to there, Piers. I would say in Germany right now at the Euros, there are English fans walking around with their dicks out, pissing in the street. I think if you go to Sweden, there are naked people everywhere, like in saunas, and it's completely fine.
You're
and normal.
comparing the fetish zone
I'm
to San
saying
Francisco
that
Pride
there's a
to
naked
England
bike ride
football
in
zone.
London very regularly, and kids walk past that naked bike ride. What you're doing is you're trying to make this a massive war against queer people, but actually this is just...
It was at the Pride event, you dumbass.
In San Francisco, where some of those people were naked at Pride recently, it's actually legal to be naked in events like that. So if you're taking your children to that, then that's on you. That's not on the queer community. And as I said, this isn't just queer people. This is all people.
I think you touched on a point that all sort of movements can devolve to become a congregation of the mentally unwell. Yes, that is fine. But each community
Why is it unwell to be naked?
You're mentally unwell if you're walking out in public naked. Yes,
why is that mentally unwell?
Because you're mad.
So you're saying people in Sweden
you don't have clothes in your house
in saunas, is that mentally unwell?
Yeah, I think if you're leaving your house...
Just because you have shame about your body...
Yes, I have shame. I'm sorry, I was raised properly. I have shame. I don't leave my house naked.
I was raised properly. I have shame.
Yeah, I have shame. I have a sense
Esther.
of shame. I don't think that it's all about me and what I want. I actually think of the
These
public.
people aren't there because of...
Well, here's the thing. Here's the point. You made a significant point, which is that there is a tendency
Mush for brains.
to devolve into some sort of congregation of the mentally unwell, which is fine.
I
yes,
never said that. That's literally not what I said. Those are your
I'm
words.
finessing what you're saying.
Right,
but the
thank
point
you.
here is that every group must take responsibility for the people within their own enclave, right? You don't expect us to tell these people that are getting naked in the name of pride to tell them to put on
But they're not
clothes.
breaking the law.
It's disgusting. They are breaking. It's public indecency.
okay.
That's not
All right,
right.
all right, hang
It's
on.
public
Let me-
indecency.
What an idiot. But they're not breaking the law. But they're doing it in front of children. They're doing it at a family-friendly Pride event, which, by the way, most of these Pride parades are family friendly. They include children, they include minors. And at this Pride event, I don't care if it's in San Francisco, I don't care if it's in Mars. The point is, in front of children, as we saw in that clip, you have a bunch of people on bicycles or motorcycles with their asses hanging out. You have portions of the event that is open to the public, by the way. You can just be walking by with your kid and see this. People in chaps getting spanked, getting urinated on, sexual acts being committed in public at Pride events. Why would you want that involved in a Pride event if you truly are about this being a safe place for all people? If you're trying to push the agenda that there is no grooming happening at these events, you might want to raise your hand and say, this is a red flag. Why is this being included in a Pride event? What the hell does their sexual depravities have to do with a Pride event, which is supposed to be about celebrating, which I don't know why, but celebrating one's sexuality, not one's sexual fetishes. Two completely different things. But of course, for James, like a traditional woke nut job, he won't differentiate between the extreme and the normal. He won't do it, because to him, that's entering a slippery slope. So let me just pretend as though we're the extremist for wanting to protect children from these types of events and environments, which is not safe for any child to be around. I don't care who you are. And if you're a parent taking your child to this event, CPS, hi, where are you?
Literally not.
Hang on.
It is not.
Let me bring in Eli on this. Eli, is there a line that Pride has crossed, as some people say? I mean, Jordan Peterson said about all this, there's a real tinge of narcissism, sexual narcissism about the whole Pride spectacle. Do people have the right to express their sexuality?
That is really bold.
Let me finish his quote. Do people have the right to express their sexuality the way they see it? To some,
You're asking Eli, the predator?
adults, but generally among human beings with any degree of civilized comportment whatsoever, it's a pretty damn private affair. Has he got a point, Eli?
No, he doesn't. It's Jordan Peterson. He never has a point.
He's a very smart man who has lots of good
Francisco
points.
was clearly demarked for adults. And I mean, personally, I was friends with some of the protesters that blocked New York City Pride. And what they're doing is
Not shocked.
human rights campaign Float, which is sponsored by Raytheon, who's currently committing genocide in Gaza. So they had their reasons.
Sir, go to Gaza.
And there needs to be more.
You'll be unalived in 5 seconds.
On a broader level, we're not responsible for every member of our group. This is how the right latches on to our different identity categories and our different social movements to try to demonize all of us for the actions of a few that might be a little.
What about
less
those who are not
respectable.
on the right, Eli, like me? I'm not on the right.
And that
I'm a liberal.
You do that to people on the right all
I'm
the
a liberal
time.
who just sees endless acts of self-harm by the trans lobby, when actually I'm with you. I want you to get fairness and equality, but I don't want you eroding other people's rights.
You keep on saying this, and yet your
Yeah.
actions speak differently.
What actions? What action?
Trying to get trans people banned from sports, comparing
I don't want
trans
to ban from
women
sport.
to
Hang on,
people
don't
identifying
misquote
as
me.
animals.
I don't want trans people banned from sports. I want them to be disallowed from competing against biological women. Different thing. I want them to be able to compete in
with
sport.
people of their own gender.
Or their own
Yes.
sex. They should compete with people of their own sex.
I think I just saw a head explode.
That is exactly the type of talking point that in 20 years we're going to be looking back at and regretting.
Really? So you think it's really
I doubt it. I doubt it.
in the Olympics, you would have just, open Olympics?
Open season.
Sex is irrelevant? Gender irrelevant? Everyone just competes
Yeah,
against each other?
absolutely.
I would too.
Really? So do you understand?
Well, everyone just can.
Eli, do you understand that by doing that, you
stupid.
literally end the Olympics? It's all over because only men would win. Do you understand that?
Hello.
That's why we separate them.
I don't want to take this down.
Now, hang on. I want Eli to respond. You literally are destroying the Olympics for anyone who's not a man.
Well, that's a very grandiose vision of it, but
Not really.
we
Not
could
really. If you look
very
at the
easily-
times, if you look at the times and the results of men Olympians against women Olympians, you will see that in almost, I think, 98% of all the events, men are so far ahead of women on speed, on power, and everything, every other discipline, women
And
would
that's
never.
why, that's
women
why
would
we
never.
separate it by
Women would never
categorization.
get. Women would never. Win
Yes, men and women categorization.
if you had your way. Is that what you
Well,
want?
that's very sexist.
No, it's
do you know that the
it's a
first
physical.
woman
Hang on,
to-
hang on, it's not sexist.
Do you
It's
know the
hang
first
on,
woman that
hang on, James,
swam
I'll
the
come to you.
channel?
I'll come to you. It is not sexist. It is a fact. It's why we separate the sexes. When Megan Rapinoe finished her career playing the soccer team, American women's soccer team, she then said that she'd be happy to see a trans woman competing in the women's team, right? Which is fine because it wouldn't take her place. But if you allowed trans women, football players, soccer players,
Biological
to
men,
compete, and enough of them began to do this, there would be no biological women left in the women's national soccer team because they would be
Well,
physically
trans
superior.
people already have the right to do that, and you're not seeing the results that you say you would be seeing.
Yeah, but you see, you and James both have this wonderfully quaint notion that if you open up the Olympics to everyone, that women would continue to win medals. They wouldn't. They'd win nothing.
Obviously, this is complicated, Piers.
It's not complicated.
No,
it's complicated.
Why we separate them? Literally, when Megan
Oh my
Rapinoe's
God, he's such a dummy.
played the Dallas under-15s,
The conversation-
they lost 8-2.
The conversation-
They were under 15-year-old boys.
the first woman to swim the English Channel, the first woman to do that, beat the men's record by over 2 hours.
He slowed down. He was trying to hit on her.
All right, hang on. All right, let's move on.
endurance
This is
swimming
actually on the
is far
same kind of
more hilarious.
subject.
All right, I'm going to end that segment here because I don't want to get into other topics just yet. James does my head in. Every time I have to watch a clip of this idiot, wow. I just can't. And then you add on Eli Ehrlich, the Predator, to the conversation as well, and it's just my head. I apologize, brain. I apologize. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of this video. What do you think of these topics? Do you think that the Olympics should be open-ended for any gender? No categories? What do you think? I think I know what you think, but I would love to know your comments down below. Every time I think maybe we're getting somewhere, I see videos like this and I'm just like, wow. We are getting nowhere. If you enjoy my content, please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit my notification bell so you know when I post a brand new video. And if you want to watch more political and social commentary videos, click on the link over here to watch yours truly. Until next time, peace.